Yo, what up, Street Dogs? Eric Kim. Alright, so the thought. Why I am so suspicious of essentially almost everyone, everything, and so forth. So, essentially, I'm really into Karl Popper's notion of falsification, which means true knowledge, wisdom, and so forth can never be confirmed even if you have a quadrillion data points. It can only ever be disconfirmed. So disconfirmation is far more rigorous than a confirmation. So for example, let's say, I observed 1 billion Asian men who could not deadlift 450 pounds, and then one might say, I have 1 million data points that has never been done, therefore it should never be able to do. And then you get one guy to do a 455 pound deadlift, then it's like, okay, it was obvious all along. So essentially people tend to cherry pick data, and I feel like the world is essentially not very rigorous when it comes to things. Now, how's it going, man? Thanks. Thank you. So the question is, why is there so little rigor in the modern world? I have some theories. So first and foremost, I think one of the things that's really holding back wisdom, knowledge, and all this accumulation of information and wisdom and stuff like that is that there's still too much faith in morality and ethics, and most thinkers and academics and stuff like that, like based on my observations, it looks like most people were raised either Catholic, Protestant, Christian, Jewish, or kind of more secular Jewish, or utilitarian, or too much belief in mysticism, whatever. And the downside of all this is that essentially people are no longer empirical in their thinking. I think there's too much, like when people believe too much in morality and ethics, it actually closes the door to knowledge and wisdom, because even if you think about Socrates, after Socrates, all modern philosophy essentially comes back to the moral and ethical. And as a consequence, people's thinking is tinged with a certain line of thinking, which I feel like it always comes to the moral and ethical, right? Because like, if you always want to think of inequality and injustice as the root cause of everything, you're gonna see everything in the context of inequality and things. So it's like kind of like confirmation bias, or it's kind of like, you go, like, if you have a certain, like a overly biased view of the world, you're only gonna see everything in those terms. But anyways, so I know for myself personally, like, I don't believe in ultimate knowledge or wisdom, whatever. I only believe in the notion that you could deepen your knowledge, self-edification, and perhaps in life, it's kind of discovering more personal truths about yourself, or society, or the way you see it. And ultimately everything comes down to subjectivity and perspectivism. And I think that even the way you see the world and approach it, to me it's kind of more of a aesthetic phenomenon, where like my personal beliefs and way of life and stuff like that is not right or wrong or ultimate truth or whatever. It's more of like, I just appreciate more of the aesthetics of what I do, how I dress, how I live, what I eat, and how I interact with others and so forth. Now, I've discovered for myself what's been hugely beneficial is trying to spend my time, my life, uncovering more of my own personal prejudices, my inner racism, my inner sexism, my inner whatever ism that I was raised with, and realizing that I'm a hugely biased individual, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but at least I know that even for myself, I cannot even 100% fully trust myself. So, and I know that even if I spend the rest of my life just thinking and philosophizing, I'm not gonna know myself 100%, and even the genesis of my thoughts, a lot of it's just kind of random and chaotic, and that's okay. Now, so let's consider, I could barely know the limits of my own knowledge, right? How could I ever know the knowledge of somebody else and the thinking of somebody else? And once again, like, everyone has their own personal prejudices, right? Like, if someone grew up Catholic, you're growing up with like original sin and, you know, always feeling guilty about everything, certainly that's going to taint their thinking and scholarship towards a certain direction, right? Or, you know, based on your class background. So like, I grew up poor, right? Then, you know, for myself as a kid growing up, I had like some sort of resentment towards rich, spoiled kids, partly because, you know, I'm coming from a poor background, but also like, I just ended up like, had this philosophy. I'm like, yo, the rich, like, I always thought that conservatives and people on the right were evil, because I'm like, yo, like, have $2 quadrillion, like, why don't you like share a little bit with the little guys like us, right? But once again, this is my own personal background, tinging maybe a more objective view on things. But anyways, so I certainly do find for myself trying to uncover my own biases is quite helpful. So now, also other things that I cannot trust. I cannot trust the media, because whether it be independent media, right media, middle media, left media, any media, it's all, if it's being supported by advertising or Google AdWords, certainly you cannot trust none of it, because it's not in their best interest to present truth. No, their best interest is more to, you know, get more page views, get more clicks, and to generate more money from the advertising revenue. Now, I don't think any of these platforms are evil. Like, it's just, you just gotta follow the money and don't get suckered, right? And also something else I discovered, studying AI and stuff like that, and, growing up in the Bay Area, ultimately, since all these tech companies rule the world now, or at least everything but China, Google, Facebook, Amazon, whatever, they're all based in like Bay Area, West Coast. And in the West Coast, we have a much more kind of liberal, utilitarian, Christian, Catholic, Judeo-moral tradition. And that's why, with any algorithm that's created by these engineers, generally tends to favor more leftist, liberal thinking rather than conservative right thinking. Now, I think both sides are actually equally silly and fallacious. I still do consider myself more of a liberal, but better yet, maybe I should better think of myself like a free spirit, a free thinker, or just Eric's opinion, right? Because it's just what I think, right? My opinion is not truth, just based on my personal experiences, and I can't use no data or nothing to verify what I believe in and my experiences are, because you could give me 1 quadrillion data points and throw statistics at me, but one cannot devalidate my experiences, my feelings, and what's actually happened to me. And also another thing that I found studying sociology and studying statistics is actually one of my favorite things studying, was stats can never prove anything to be correct. However, it could falsify things, because all you need is one outlier, one extreme point. And the problem with most statisticians or social scientists or whatever is that they just kind of rub out that one little outlier, and they just want to kind of cherry pick their data and stuff like that. So once again, don't put faith in statistics. Like, and statistics won't ever really even tell you nothing. Like, for example, I was curious. I was like, gun killings, police killings of innocent civilians in America, right? And this is where everything gets so biased, is because in terms of raw numbers of people who get killed by police violence onto citizens, you know, Caucasian people with European descent, in terms of raw numbers of human heads, more Caucasian people, or what a lot of people like to call white people, which I actually don't believe in that classification, compared to people with African American descent, which the media now calls black people, which I actually find hugely problematic and quite racist. So, but the statistics show proportionally, you know, in terms of proportions, you know, African American men, you know, given the numbers of the U.S. population, like I think actually Caucasian white in America, I think it's like what, like, you know, I was on the census website, the non-white, the white non-Hispanic categorization, which essentially means like Caucasian, is around like 60-something% America, and then African American, you know, black, is in America maybe like 15%. So if you take that statistics into account, then, you know, statistically, yeah, African American men do get killed more than white men, but, you know, in terms of raw numbers, more white guys get killed by the police every single year. Now, it's tricky now, because then the statistics could become politicized however you want to skew it, right? So I was under the misconception, and you know, this is just my bias, is that raw numbers of human heads, more African Americans were getting killed than Caucasian men by the police. Now, actually, when I looked into the data and the stats, I discovered actually what was really happening was proportionally more African Americans are getting killed than Caucasian, whereas, like, you know, I think the media tries to, or if you're like kind of a liberal media agency, you tend to paint it more like, you know, more African Americans are getting killed than the Caucasian males, which is not true. But the point is essentially to show that, you know, it's not fair that more African Americans are getting killed on average, or proportionally to the U.S. population than Caucasian people, which are still the majority in the States, right? But anyways, so essentially what I mean to say is the statistics can be gamed whatever way you construe it. And even like I was on the website, you know, Snopes.com, which is supposed to track, you know, conceptions or misconceptions or fact checking. And I've actually found that even like Snopes.com and a lot of these other fact checking websites do have a liberal leftist bent. So some funny ideas, right? So for example, I don't support Trump, right? But, you know, I just find it funny is that, like, if you're an intellectual or a smart person or a scholar or whatever, right? You're actually not allowed to support Trump nor vote for him, right? So what does that mean? That means that certainly our education system, our universities are run by a much more leftist approach. And not to say that's necessarily like a bad thing, but that's just like my observations. So everything tends to be skewed a certain way, and most people just take it at face value, and then most people don't actually challenge these views by themselves. And why is that? So why aren't there more free-spirited free thinkers? So I mean, for the most part, I think social media and the internet is actually to blame, in the sense that, you know, these algorithms that we're fed ends up creating what they call a filter bubble, which means if I'm a liberal, you know, and let's say I go on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, I'm far more likely to be shown and fed leftist, you know, anti-Trump news, right? However, you know, let's say, you know, I'm a conservative, right? And I I'm all for like guns and stuff like that, right? In that context, the only news I'll see in the media is like, how's it going, man? Is that your car? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Where's your Lamborghini? Right? So so the problem then is everything in your newsfeed is of course going to be like pro-Trump, you know, pro-white supremacy, whatever you have it, and so everything is skewed. And honestly, like, I don't really blame people for being addicted to their phones, and I don't really blame for people being addicted to their phones and social media, because like, would you blame a heroin addict or a crack addict for being addicted to it? No, like you wouldn't, right? So what do I mean to say is then, be skeptical of all news platforms, even the objective ones, right? And certainly, like, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I think those people are kind of stupid. And then essentially most people are actually quite stupid and gullible, is what I've discovered in my personal experiences. And even like these intellectuals, like, you know, very smart people that I know, sooner or later, you know, they kind of like looking for something more like spiritual or religious, whatever, and they're not religious, right? So they're too focused on the secular and the profane. And so if they want something that's much more religious or sacred, they end up following notions of like mysticism and kind of this weird stuff, or most of them end up, or many of them end up following Buddhism or whatever like that. So anyways, the world's kind of a crazy place with all these different opinions and stuff like that. So what is one to do? So my thought is, with thinking for yourself, my very simple recommendation: uninstall social media from your phone. I recommend at least a 1-month detox, right? And if you actually really want to go to know the news, go to official government website, official local news websites. Anything.gov is typically much more like, I mean, not necessarily reputable in the sense that, like, of course it's going to be biased towards pro-government stuff, but still just talk more to strangers and just spend some more time to think for yourself. And the best way to share your opinions: make your own blog, bluehost.com, install wordpress.org, start your own YouTube channel. But also know that sooner or later YouTube's probably going to get censored one way too, because Google owns YouTube, which is definitely much more leftist than whatever. But yeah, just share your opinion, have the courage and the balls to say what's really on your mind. And no opinion is right or wrong, it's just your opinion. If we're not talking about mathematics or physics, everything is opinion, everything is false. But just strive towards authenticity and saying what's really on your mind, and hopefully you could make this to elevate and encourage other people to think for themselves. And the more, I think, my thought is, the more you get people to be skeptical, the more you get people to think for themselves, the better for society.